Surprise! My computer's working again. Hello, I'm Viddy of ViddyOGamesForFun, and it is now the 31st of December 2019, which means another 10 years of existence on this planet that began back on January 1st, 2010 have now passed. But not the memories of them, the key one to discuss now being the notable game releases that were played. And I haven't played all of them. Yet I felt like looking back and choosing my 15 favourite games from the past decade. I almost thought of doing 10 or 20, but nah, sticking with 15. This is a fairly hard list to do, and not just because of games I haven't played. For one thing, I'm more of a Nintendo person. I've also decided not to include remasters or ports, mostly. So I guess there is a degree of bias here. Plus, I spent a good portion of the decade discovering or replaying retro games. I discovered Chrono Trigger in 2012, then kept on playing it and then reviewed it, and I even replayed Paper Mario. Why didn't I play The Witcher 3 or other indies, for example? Well, I guess that's a New Year's resolution. Seriously, a resolution to play a game for the first time? Maybe I'll make an update down the track of games from this decade that I ended up playing or liking later. But in the meantime, hope you enjoy this video of my 15 favourite games from 2010 to 2019, in no particular order. Waiting for a sequel to the previous decade's innovative Mario game Super Mario Galaxy didn't take too long, and it was worth it. Much of the level design was extremely creative, complemented by lovely music and graphics that seemed to push the Wii's limits. Oh, and it also has Yoshi! Plus, the game felt more challenging than the first game, so it was good to have a better implemented co-op option. I loved playing Persona 5. This was 100 hours of compelling JRPG fun, complete with a nice art style, cool music, and a relatable story. The gameplay was fun to experiment with, which made the game longer lasting beyond the initial 100-hour runtime. Wow! To think that's going to happen again with Persona 5 Royal and any other Persona games that I may play, because Persona 5 is my first Persona game and it's got me interested in the series. Link's Awakening was, or is, one of the more unique titles in the Legend of Zelda series, so it was nice to see it get a remake on the Switch. The graphics and sound, regardless of personal taste, are very nice, but it's really down to the gameplay that was tweaked from before for what is probably a smoother experience. From all the exploration and secrets, to the dreamy story and even the inclusion of hero mode, the remake of Link's Awakening stood out from other games this decade. When it comes to gaming this decade, how can you not forget the most recent Smash Bros. Title? This game is just so much fun to play that it's difficult to know what to say about it now that would do it justice. The production values are simply well executed, the gameplay of the series is still intact with minor twists, and above all, it is just a, mainly, Nintendo history treasure. Since this game is getting more content, it may as well be one of the best games of the next decade too. It was good to see Super Mario Odyssey go back to the more open-ended exploration of previous Mario titles. Each of the worlds were fun to explore, with much to do. The capture idea of Cappy was especially cool, and even when Bowser was defeated, well, there was still plenty of content to indulge in. Throw in really nice production values as well, and you've got a stellar 3D platformer game, one that introduced me to the Nintendo Switch. If there is one exclusive worth getting on the Wii U, it is Pikmin III. It was fun to play with a Pikmin by telling them to engage in combat, collect fruit, and so on. The series' first entry in HD has never looked this beautiful before, and there are some nice tweaks to the gameplay that help with multitasking and so on. It is hard to put the controller down and do one day of exploration after the other. Is it the best Pikmin game? Maybe Pikmin 4 in the next decade will determine that. To be fair, I've only played the first game out of all the recent adventures of Lara Croft. It was bundled with the PlayStation 3. But in any case, the 2013 game of Tomb Raider was an enthralling experience. Lara Croft felt more relatable in what was a generally good story, which made it hard to stop playing and go through one action-packed scenario after another, while also taking time to explore. Well, it wouldn't really be a Tomb Raider game otherwise. Surely any Nintendo Switch owner's Halloween was complete with the long-awaited release of Luigis Mansion 3. Luigi's ghost-busting adventure was a joy from start to finish. The charming characters and setting were brought to life with beautiful graphics, and the familiar yet different gameplay was great, complete with puzzle solving, exploration, ghost hunting/combat, and a number of secrets. The multiplayer was fun provided your "over here" messages were responded to. I may be cheating a bit with including Shadow of the Colossus on the list, because this did originally come out of the PlayStation 2 in 2005/2006, but this game came out again on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 this decade, so that is how I experienced it twice. And I'm glad I did. Because of the artistic production values, minimalistic story, and unique gameplay and so on, this game is a memorable and even emotional experience. I played The Last of Us in the last weeks of the decade, and wow, there is much to praise here, including the visuals, sound design and music, and the gameplay of exploring and combat. But the story is probably the best aspect of the game, as the apocalyptic tale is dark, riveting and emotional, especially the development of Joel and Ellie's friendship. This leads to optional conversations and side content. I'll review this game hopefully soon, before The Last of Us Part 2 comes out. It is almost easy to forget that the Stanley Parable came out this decade, but it's hard to forget its impact. The Stanley Parable is a simple yet fun game that is an interesting meta-commentary on game design, the choices we make in life, and so on, to the point of a strange sensation going through you when you've explored every possible ending, regardless of whether you develop games or not. It is also one of the funniest games I've ever played. It is hard to imagine what the next decade would be like for Mario Kart, but for now, we've got Mario Kart 8. It is quite possibly one of the better entries in the series, where the familiar gameplay of racing through the Mushroom Kingdom at high speeds while throwing shells and bananas feels more exciting and fun. The multiplayer is good, and the variety of content is nice, with the deluxe version on the Switch especially giving us a better battle mode, as well as more races and tracks. There are other Resident Evil games I wish I discovered or rediscovered this decade, but still, the Resident Evil 2 remake made for one of the more memorable survival horror experiences of the past 10 years. The gameplay from the original was brought back in an interesting way, complete with modern camera and controls, and it was still adrenaline filled and more than a little scary. If the remake of Resident Evil 3 is anything like this, the next decade looks promising for this horror IP. It probably has been said to death that many a gamer, or especially YouTuber who plays games, were intrigued by the concept of this indie that was originally shown at PAX, where you can give the human race the treatment they may deserve, by being a disruptive, honking goose. And it worked. It's a very short, yet so sweet game with nice graphics and an addictive mix of puzzle and stealth gameplay. If you haven't played this, a group of geese will deal with you. Or if not geese, Daleks. If there is a contender for the best game I've played this decade, it is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The art style retains the positive aspects of past games while still being somewhat unique, plus there's surprisingly minimalistic music. The world is enormous, complete with many things to do no matter how much you plan the adventure. While aspects of past Zelda games, such as dungeon-centric items, are missed, and there are problems with the gameplay and even story, this game is still amazing. It all comes down to context, where the many afternoon hours I spent exploring this vast open world on release were purely escapism at that time in my life. Even going back to this game, I still love it, and I eagerly await the sequel. Well, this was an interesting list to put together, and just in time for the end of the year. I might talk about 2019, especially for this channel, very soon, and I'm already preparing videos, including reviews of Link's Awakening and Astral Chain that would have been out in December of 2019 if it weren't for my computer. It has been an interesting decade for gaming. Who knows what the next one will bring, as next generation hardware potentially renders current systems obsolete, and highly anticipated games like The Last of Us Part 2 and the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and surely more may potentially get the new decade off to an interesting start. And of course, talk about your favourite games from this decade down in the comments or something, because there are those I've surely missed, and there are quite a few I aim to discover or rediscover as soon as I can. I, Viddy of Video Games for Fun, hope you had a good Christmas or whatever it is you celebrate, a good 2019, and a good decade of the 2010s. Happy New Year, and I'll see you soon.